I'm Alan Reynolds, and this is my testimony. I've been in this church that we're in right now for 64 and a half years, actually a little longer if you count the time I was in my mother's belly. God has been graceful to me all 64 and a half years. I live by His grace. It's not always been an easy life. I was born and raised in the church, which has been good and bad. The good is I had loving parents who introduced me to Christ early on, but it also gave me a sense of entitlement that I think can be dangerous. It can keep us from truly developing a relationship with God that we have to have for that walk to be meaningful. Our relationship with God is not the same as our work for God. They can work hand in hand, but they don't always. And in my life, it hasn't always. I've seen the time I spent here in the church, doing things in the church physically, as being my walk with God at times. And I've realized later in life that it wasn't helping the walk with God. God has had to use instances in my life to wake me up. The first really powerful one was in 1999 when my dad developed pancreatic cancer. And through that, I eventually learned to depend on God more. I had always tended to depend on myself. I used to call myself a fixer. I like to fix things. My parents said I tore stuff apart as a teenager just to learn how to put them back together, and I liked doing that. This was an event in my life that I didn't have control over. I couldn't fix it. So I had to learn to depend on God. That was when I first learned to really have meaning in the words, "Your will be done." Because of course my prayer at the time was, God, please heal my dad. He means so much to me. We work together every day. And so that was hard. But I learned through that process that to really get an answer to prayer, we've got to be praying a meaningful prayer. And to me, that learned to be that God's will be done. And His will was done. My dad passed away at the end of 99, just shy of the year 2000. That was strong in my life. It brought me closer to God, but as unfortunately many of us humans do, we tend to drift away again. Not that I ever drifted away physically from the church, but drifted away from my relationship with God. He then again in 2015 allowed another event in my life to draw me closer to Him, and that was when my mother got sick with pancreatic cancer. She was a strong witness in my life. Both of my parents were, and she was very graceful and through her illness, and helped draw me closer to God through that. And in 2016, she passed away. And again, I had to learn to depend on God because there was nothing I could do in that situation. So my walk with Him got closer. But then, as happened before, time went on. I still did a lot of work in the church, but wasn't developing my relationship with God nearly the way I should. So God said, I've really got to test him now. And He did. In 2020, September of 2020, in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic, I developed a little bit of a pain. I'd gone into the office which we were rarely doing. We were working remotely. But I went in and to do some work on a fellow worker's laptop and just started feeling bad. Eventually called my wife Joanne and said, I think you're going to have to come pick me up, because we weren't traveling with other people at the time. And I eventually called her later because I was feeling worse and said, you're going to have to come take me to the hospital. And she did. That was a little ordeal unto itself, but eventually saw the doctor, gave me some pain medicine and did a scan. And the doctor said, we found the reason for your pain. You've had a kidney stone that's passing. And that I'd had one before. It felt a little different. It was a little worse. But in all actuality, that was the good news. She said, I've also got some bad news. We found through that CT scan that you have a tumor on your pancreas. And when she left the room, my wife and I looked at each other and just about in unison said, this is a God thing. He allowed me to have this pain, this kidney stone, to reveal what I had had no symptoms of prior to this, what turned out to be pancreatic cancer. That started a long journey for me, my wife, my immediate family, and my church family. And I know that it was God doing his best to draw me close to him, to develop a relationship with him, not just doing for him, but doing with him, allowing him to do with me and to use me to be a witness for him. Going through cancer, the treatments, the surgery, it was tough on my family, on my church family, who couldn't have been more gracious. All the visits, all the food, even had a violin concert at my house outside sitting on a swing. That was God witnessing to me, to give me a story to tell, to witness for him. I thank him for all of that. And I've said surprisingly to myself that if I could go back to September of 2020 and change things, I wouldn't. It is what has drawn me close to God, has given me what I hope is a witness to be able to share with others, to let them know that we as humans can't do it ourselves, even when we think we can, that we have to learn to depend on him for everything in our lives. So I thank him for the kidney stone. I thank him for the pancreatic cancer, that it has allowed me to draw close to him and hopefully can be a witness for him in these last days, that we all can do everything we possibly can to keep ourselves ready, keep ourselves in him, and do all we can to disciple others in our community, so that we can all go home very, very soon. That is my testimony.